Hello again everyone, and welcome to the IEEE RAS Solidworks series. Today we're going to go over Module 1.4, which is Revolving Extrusions and Cuts. And while we're at it, we're probably going to learn a little bit more about reference geometry, which is something that will be very helpful for you as you're working through this, any one of your projects, right? So whenever you only have a 2D sketch, and you're beginning by doing a revolving extrusion, right, what you'll do is you can either click on the object, right? Or what you'll do is you'll click on the object, and you'll go to Features. Normally you can just click Revolve Boss Space, right? But you can see nothing is happening. Well, the reason for that is because we have a contour selected, which is our sketch pattern, but we don't have an axis of revolution set up. So I could select one of these edges, and I could end up revolving the whole part around that edge. That's one option. If I do that, we will see this whole entire part is going to revolve, and now we got this kind of hockey puck looking thing. But instead, what I want to do is I want to actually define some sort of line that I'm going to revolve this part around. So let's go ahead and do that. If I go back to Sketch, right, we can see there's the line. But we don't want a line, we want a center line, right? So what I'll do then is I can click anywhere, right, and then go ahead and set up a line. This line, I can then revolve my part around. Now, like anything else, of course, I could smart dimension between the rest of the part and determine a length in which that center line is going to be far away from my part. I can make it 20 millimeters if I wanted to, right? That way I'm very precise. Now that I have a center line on which to revolve around upon, and then I have my actual figure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Features, select my contour, hit Revolve Boss Base, and now it's automatically, or you can do it manually, select the axis of revolution, which is right here. Now if I go ahead and double check everything, right, we're going 360 degrees, I could even select something like 180 degrees around my center line, or 270 degrees. It kind of gives me a little Pac-Man looking kind of circular. Just like anything else, I can go ahead and make it back to 360 degrees, and now we have our part. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark, right, and we'll revolve it around, and now you can see I took that outline and I completely revolved it around 180 degrees, or sorry, 360 degrees, right? And it's really up to you how you want to use this, right? It's great for making circular parts. So if I go ahead and redo this, maybe then delete the center line, make it go on the other side. So let's go ahead and define our center line. Pretty easy. I'm not going to go ahead and give me any measurements for now, but I'm just going to go ahead and go to Features, select my contour, Revolve Boss Base, and I got the line. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this again. But now what we have, right, and you see an application, I've created just kind of a pulley, or almost like a, best way to describe it, it's like a spool, right? So if you wanted to 3D print out the beginning of what would be a pulley, right, you could totally do that, right, just by designing a simple contour, a simple sketch, and then revolving around that 360 degrees. There's a lot of different options. Now if I go ahead and reset the directions, I'll go to the front part of the sketch, right? We have this, and it's very simple. But one interesting thing is that you can also do revolving cuts on your parts, right? So now what we can do is, now that we have a 3D space, we can actually go and define something called reference geometry. Now I can go ahead and add in planes, axes, coordinate systems, all sorts of stuff, right? Or even the center of mass in my part. But to start off, I want to define an axis in the middle here that I can then begin doing other sketches around. So I can go ahead and click in the middle, and I'll go ahead and go, so I'm just kind of selecting that little circle or drum, the cylinder inside there. And I'm going to go and click on reference geometry and insert in an axis, right? So what it's done is it takes that shape or contour of the 3D object that I have and tries to make some sort of axis out of it. Logically, what it's going to do is, if it's a circle, it'll create an axis in the middle of that circular shape. Right, so that's pretty good. I'll go ahead and hit check mark. Now I have an axis in the middle of my part. I can click it, extend it in both directions, and then if we go ahead and pick the side like this, or let's see what angle this is. This is the right side. Let's go to the front. we can see I've now defined an axis that goes through my part. Right? And this is very helpful for later on when we want to sketch in different ways. So I'll go ahead and why don't we create a new sketch and learn how to use the revolving cuts. Just like anything else, I got to select a plane, or actually got to sketch. But unlike before, when you sketch a second time, right, it's kind of hard to sketch here because we have a lot of different 2D surfaces, and we don't have easy planes anymore since this is like a curve. So what we can go ahead and do is we can maybe find a plane that's already existing for us to go ahead and work with. So I'm going to select the front again. If we go to this feature tree, it seems like I got a top plane, right plane, and middle plane. Let's look at the front plane. Lucky for us, the front plane is in the very middle of our part. So I'm going to reset my view, and I can go and select the front plane and begin sketching on it. Right, now I have a new sketch. Now I could go ahead and go on this front plane, zoom in a bit, and begin to actually create my shape. Right, so I could go down here, create this 2D shape using some lines here, and there we go, look at that. I have myself a new sketch. I'll go ahead and rotate it, and you can see it's kind of right in the middle there. Readjust myself using the little menu. And I can take this, now that I have it selected, and I'm going to go ahead and take this contour, this sketch, go to Features, but instead of doing Revolve Boss Base, I'm going to do Revolved Cut. So I'll click on Revolved Cut, and it gives me lots of different options. Blind, up to vertex, up to surface, offset, mid-plane. We'll stick with blind for now. But then I can go ahead then, pick the new axis of revolution. But this time my axis of revolution can be right here, right? Can I see it like that? Right? I have that line. That line's a permanent part of my document. It's an actual piece of geometry that I've referenced and I can reference throughout my project. It's a great way of doing a lot of shortcuts instead of constantly having to try to measure out the middle of that space every single time. So I'm going to go back to the front, right, and then let's go and take a look at how this looks. I select the axis of revolution, my contour, which is right there, and we can go and cut around. Right, so what it did is it cut out that little shape you can see completely around the document. And this looks even more like a pulley, right? Because it's not just one single rectangular slot, but it's got some edges too. And just like we learned before, I could, if I really wanted to, I could select both of these little corners, do a little fillet, and maybe I could do like a 2mm fillet. And look at that. We already have this really complex part, or it looks complex at first, but all it is the simple number of kind of these 3D operations that we've done on our part. This is something you could also 3D print out and would work great as your own custom pulley. Right? And so from this you can begin to see how people are making these more advanced parts, right? You'll see some really complex parts, if you look at online 3D models, right? Or CAD parts that you may find in Solidworks, right? It's through the combination of all these different things that we have in the features menu, that's how people design all these very unique little sections. Right? And so it's up to you, for whatever project you're making, to use these 3D modeling operations to create your own unique parts for whatever purpose you need. If I were making a pulley system, this would be a great start, because this is something I could easily go to the Texas Invention Works or the Makerspace you might have heard. It's a little different this semester, but you could go in and you could take this file, right, do some other things, and you could 3D print it out. So this is not just a part you're designing, it's an actual physical part that you could make using additive manufacturing in any sort of form. Right. So with that, I want to thank you all for sitting into this another SolidWorks series episode here. So the next time we're going to go over actually how to use assemblies and mates, and that's going to be very useful for us. Because once we make parts, right, parts are kind of segments of a whole. So we're going to learn how to take those parts, add them together, and really make it so that we have all these different things, all these different parts, put them together to form a whole, and that's really when SolidWorks kind of takes its true form and really where a lot of benefits of SolidWorks comes from. So with that, thank you all for attending this little episode, and I'll see you all next time.